Right then, people, we're back inside the building. Welcome back to Trickstar Radio. My name is Kovu, and this is The Breakfast Show, of course. Out to everyone locked in right about now. It's just gone 3 minutes past 9, and we are getting into our first interview of the day. Man like Ed Rants joins us on the line. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm good. It feels weird and unnatural to be waking up and 7 o'clock in the morning. I haven't done that since I graduated from uni. But yeah, it feels good. It feels good to be up and on the show. Thank you for having me.
That's what I like to hear, man. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, we've been in communication for a fair few months now. Obviously, we started talking during lockdown, along the lines of kind of building YouTube content more than anything else. So it's sick to kind of get you on this platform, which obviously I've been doing for a hot minute. So what we're going to be talking about today is obviously what you've been working on with Finesse Foreva, which is obviously a very nicely established brand. We're going to be talking about your personal YouTube journey as well, and then any other bits that are in between. So it should be a very enjoyable one. What I want to kind of start off with, for those that aren't aware, obviously there's a lot of stuff on this show which is based entirely on backgrounds, and we have a real kind of range of artists and different musical figures that come on this show. So the first question I'm going to ask is, for those that aren't aware, who is Ed Rants?
So, I am basically the head of editorial at Finesse Foreva. So, Finesse Foreva is an independent record label that was started in Croydon in South London, and we kind of looked to kind of expand. We started off mainly kind of working with UK drill artists, and we kind of been established in that way, and it's kind of what we're known for, but we are kind of looking to branch out. Currently, we've got Skendo and AM on the roster, who are both going to be doing a lot of stuff over the course of this year and have done loads of stuff previously, so look out for them. And obviously, S1 working with us as well, and a couple new artists here and there, S-Graphs and SYM, as well as Jojo 100. And so we've kind of just been expanding out as well on producers as well. In terms of like a roster of drill producers, we probably have the best roster in probably the whole of the UK, I can confidently say. Like, even from having just JB, Gotcha and Ghosty under the same production team, that in of itself is insane.
Amazing.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Wicked, man. I mean, it's really kind of cool to see, to kind of hear about the journey as well. And what I love as well is the confidence that you kind of have in your roster, kind of seeing, obviously, that journey you've kind of been through. And obviously, you've been with Finesse Foreva for a fair amount of time now. So to see the artist you're working with on a day-to-day basis, when you go into the office, do you kind of go, wow, this is quite cool to kind of be in this position?
Yeah, it's weird because I was working remote for quite a while, because I was still living in Manchester after I graduated from uni. And then obviously I moved back to London and kind of started over with things, and now I'm working in the office and kind of seeing people a bit more on a regular basis. It is quite interesting. Like, it's weird when you meet a lot of these artists and they're not what you expected them to be. And in a way, despite everything they've been through and despite what they rap about, they are kind of people at the end of the day who do kind of take fun and enjoy normal things just like everybody else does. So yeah, it's actually really interesting.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it, man. And obviously, so obviously with that of working as a record label, there are a lot of different kind of elements to what Finesse Foreva do. So what are your kind of daily roles then? What would you say like an average day for yourself is?
So me, I do more press release stuff and kind of coming up with interesting marketing ideas. Currently working on trying to revive the YouTube channel and make some use out of that, and we've got a lot of things coming down in the pipeline in that angle. And then I also run the blog. That's how I got brought in the first place. Funnily enough, there was no actual job open at Finesse Foreva. There was no job advertisement. I literally just messaged them and said, hey, this is what I do, this is my expertise, this is my degree. I'm pretty sure you can find a way to make me useful, or I can find a way to make myself useful for you guys. So they got me down, they had a chat with me, and then we kind of just established, hey, this is what you can do for us. And it kind of just grew from there. And now I kind of do quite a lot more bits and bobs here and there. Trying to find just really weird and wacky ideas to kind of push the brand of Finesse Foreva in all sorts of different angles. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Wicked, man. I mean, it sounds like more than anything else, you've kind of done the thing which I love to see people do, which is essentially kind of carve out a role for yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. There literally was no job for me. I literally made the job itself. So yeah. Quite literally.
Sick, man. I love that. You know what it is? I have such an amount of time and appreciation for people that kind of do have that sort of thing within them that kind of makes you kind of go, look, you know what? Even if there isn't a position here, I'm going to make you want to find a position for me. I love that kind of energy.
it's one of those things where, in a way, where obviously kind of one of the principles of business is providing extra value. You as an employee, you do the same. You provide extra value to any company that you may or may not want to work for. So if it's one of those things where you want to kind of try and do what I did, my advice would be quite literally prove to them or incentivize them how you can be valuable to them. Because in a way, they may not even know how you can be valuable to them until you tell them.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely, man. And I think that's a trick that is almost like it's almost part of creative industries. You know, it's kind of proving your worth to an extent.
Course. Yeah, really is.
Okay, cool. So, kind of moving on with that. Obviously, the reason we kind of have originally started getting in contact was through kind of YouTube reviews and things like that. So, I've got one question for you. Obviously, you're running the Ed Rants channel essentially. It's Ed Rants About Music, isn't it? Is the name of the channel?
Yeah, Ed Rants About Music. That's my channel. I started that about 2 months ago.
I think it's. You know what? I think it's a little bit longer than that.
A little bit longer.
Yeah, a little bit longer. So obviously with what you do on the channel, you tend to kind of do full album breakdowns and really kind of get into the nitty gritty of what makes a good album if it is a good album, and then also what makes a bad album if it is a bad album. So a question I want to ask is, and you don't have to say any names to this, but I think it's quite an interesting question. Have you ever had any kind of negative responses online to your reviews of people's music?
Okay. My first ever review was Insomnia, so the Skepta, Young Ads, and Chip tape.
Okay.
Chip has blocked me. Chip has blocked me. So, yeah, that's the answer to that one.
Okay, yeah, cool. I mean, that I wasn't even expecting a name, but there we go. That's exactly the sort of thing
that's the answer to that.
I mean, the thing is, what's quite interesting with your channel is I feel you're not kind of shy of kind of causing a bit of controversy, because obviously you had a video quite recently talking about why are people scared of EDM music. Like, I remember, what was the response to that like? Because I remember that blowing up on my feed.
I think it was when I kind of had a really wild take. It was an interesting take, and I think it was a decent one, but I agree it was wild, where I kind of, you look at what EDM music is, or EDM is as an umbrella term, because a lot of people feel like EDM actually has a sound and is a genre in of itself, which is a misconception because it's not. Like, you had people on Twitter saying the EDM has to be 140 BPM, and it's just like, well, I don't know, there's plenty of genres under EDM that don't follow.
Yeah, of course.
Rule.
I would say there's very little EDM that is at 140.
Yeah, so I literally made the argument, well, if you think about how EDM is made, ideally it's artificially created sounds, and what setting it is played in, drill can be categorized as EDM. It's not to say that drill is house. It's not that extreme. That's not the point I made. The point I made was, to that extent, EDM, like, drill can be EDM, because, for example, like, the main musical characteristic of drill being an 808 bass line. An 808 bass line, that's not an authentic sound. That's not a natural sound. You don't pick up an instrument and play an 808 bass line.
No, of course. It's almost like the original kind of electronic sound to an extent. That idea of it's a TBT drum kit, isn't it? Is it a TBT? I think it's a TB drum kit. And obviously the 808 sound is that original kind of booming kick drum that we heard on so many sort of original sort of hip hop tunes. But it is a completely electronic sound.
Yeah, and then I kind of used that as kind of a way to probe into ideas of what black music is, and specifically the term unts music, and usually how it's made as a connotation.
I love that term, bro. I love the fact that in the videos you literally use the term unts music. It had me in stitches.
I wanted that to be a thing, because I did look into the idea, like, that essentially it started off as just what house fans call deep house. And it was kind of just an inside joke amongst house and deep house fans, but it kind of just blew up to be more than that. And then it kind of took off to be something else. But that in of itself, what it became, doesn't really make that much logical sense. And that's kind of what my video was.
Yeah,
and in a way, it kind of comes from a lack of musical knowledge. It's like, okay, people would say that, I don't know, techno isn't necessarily black music in that sense, and they would class it as unts music. But techno, the fathers of techno were black. The guys that started techno, it was an American duo. It was an American duo that made some of the first techno tunes, and then some of the first house tunes, like, and that sort of thing. So they were a huge part of pushing that whole sound. And when it hit the whole of Europe, it hit it like a firestorm. It was everywhere. And yeah, I think it's interesting to see when you trace music back how much you figure out, and because people aren't really willing to dig, they kind of miss out on those sort of things and don't really understand how a lot of black culture influence and shape a lot of the music scene that we currently have.
Definitely. No, and I think we're actually at a point now where, well, realistically, we're at a point where the two biggest genres in the world, from what I can see, are essentially dance music and hip hop. They're the two big kind of overarching genres of what are the two biggest genres of music in the world. Yeah. I'd say dancehall fits into that somewhere, along in that sort of congestion. But I think if we're looking at overall parent genres that cover like a big selection of sound, you look at all those three alone, all three of them are literally black music. So it's almost a little bit unusual that there's almost like a sort of instant dismissal. Yeah, it's very odd, the idea that it's almost weird, because it's like one thing that you hear a lot of people who portray certain narratives like to say is like, when people talk about black immigrants, for example, is the one thing that obviously people like to say is you need to leave and take everything you brought with you back with you. And it's just like, okay, if we take back everything we brought to the UK, just thinking music alone, half the genres you listen to you wouldn't have. No, we'd have nothing. We'd have Lewis Capaldi on repeat. That's what we'd have. Right, then we go.
You take it back, like the Windrush generation, they brought soca and calypso and blues and jazz and reggae, and without all the stuff that they brought with them, you don't get ska, you don't get anything that happens after calypso or ska, you don't get grime, you don't get drum and bass, you don't get garage, you don't get house. There's just so many genres that just wouldn't exist.
You don't get it. It's very, very true. This station wouldn't exist, for instance, because that's what this station is built on. What we're going to do next, we're going to jump into one of the tracks you did send over. This one goes by the name of Chop That Free, so it comes from AM. We're going to get into this one now and then talk about it in just a second, people. So don't go anywhere. We're live on the line with man like Ed Rants.
Breakfast with CubCamTV.
Trickstar Radio.